It's time to make a homemade pumpkin pie that does not involve sugar but still tastes amazing. So I actually grew some pumpkins at my farm. So I went out to pick a pumpkin, had my little corgis running around with me looking for different pumpkins. And basically we just had this kind of mound where we had some pumpkin seeds that some pumpkins just kind of turned up in and around the bushes. So pulling out a pumpkin to use, and then I'm going to show you guys some really easy ways to make this pumpkin pie very healthy and very simple. So first off, you just kind of slice off the top of the pumpkin, because first we're going to get that going in the oven and get it cooking. So just kind of use a knife to take that top part off, and it can be pretty hard, so you have to like really get your elbow grease in there and get that going, get that top cut off. I don't know, I could probably use a sharper knife, but maybe our knives need a little bit of sharpening, but it looks a little bit like this. You work at it a little bit, you get it down, and then you get that top right off there. And once you have that top off, then you have to use the littler knife to cut out the middle part. So I get the smaller knife, and I just need to poke an actual hole into the pumpkins. That way we can start scooping out all the seeds. Now, I love eating roasted pumpkin seeds, so I'm going to show you guys how I do that. It's super simple and easy. So you just pull out the little lid, and then it's time to scoop out all of those pumpkin seeds. You can see one of my little corgis in the background in there watching me cook everything. So you just start pulling out all those pumpkin seeds and pulling them off the top of the little lid. If you leave some of them in there, it's not the end of the world, because when they cook, as long as you have the lid on top, they will get pretty soft and then they will puree well. But usually it's nicer to get them all out, because then you don't risk having any little bits or hard chunkies in there in your pumpkin pie. So you try to get all those seeds out. I usually leave all the guts of the pumpkin inside, so any of the stringy parts, that will cook, that will get pureed, it will taste totally fine. So I just get all of the seeds out, I just pull them out with my hands, or if it's a smaller hole, I'll use a spoon to get them all out. And there can be quite a lot in there. Like, this wasn't a massive pumpkin, and yet there's tons and tons of seeds in there. And this pumpkin, the size that it is, I actually ended up making 2 pies out of this particular pumpkin. So depending on what you've got, you can use it in different ways. And I basically just try to get all of those seeds out there. I'm going to speed up the footage because it takes a little bit of time to get all of those out there. You can see I've got another pumpkin in the background, because we love to do this kind of thing at this time of year in the fall. We try to make use of having those fresh pumpkins and making them taste super delicious doing it this way. And once we get all of those out, we've got all of our seeds there. Inside looks much better and empty, but you can see we've got some of the guts in there, the stringy parts. So we just leave that all inside. And to cook the pumpkin, we just put that little lid piece, the part that I cut out, I just stuff it back in there, because you may as well cook it and use it. Doesn't matter if it falls in the hole. And then you just put the lid back on the pumpkin, and that will help to make sure it doesn't get dried out and get hard. It will just make it stay all soft and delicious. So I put the pumpkin on one tray, and then I put the seeds on another one, but I put them both in the oven at the same time. I just take the seeds out a lot faster. So I'll put both of those in there. For the seeds, before I toss them in there, I like to add a little bit of oil. So this is some avocado oil. I just give it a little bit of a drizzle. And then you can add whatever seasoning you like. So I often add some Celtic salt. Celtic salt has a lot of minerals in them that are still really good for you. So I'll do some of that. Sometimes I'll experiment with other types of spices. I just made some more today, and I used a Brazilian spice on them just to try a different flavor. So whatever you want to do, and then I just kind of roll them around, toss them around a little bit to make it nice and spread out. And then I'm going to shove those in the oven after doing all of that. So that makes it pretty easy. I just kind of spread them out, try to make sure they're not in any chunks or packed together, because they will kind of stick together when you cook them. So I just kind of spread them out a little bit, pat them down there, make sure they're all kind of spread out. It's a lot of seeds coming from a little pumpkin, so there's a lot going to be able there to munch on, but between me and my kiddos, it's going to all get eaten up. So there's lots of them there, just kind of picking out those little parts. And then the oven, I usually set the oven to 400 degrees to cook them. And so what I'll do is put the seeds in, usually up top there, and then I'll put the the pumpkin down below. And the seeds usually only for about 10 minutes or so. I'm going to put a cup of water. I'll pour that into the pan just to help make sure for the pumpkin that it stays nice and soft and has some water there for some steam, just to make sure that it really stays soft. You don't have to do that step, but I find that it helps a little bit. And then I just set my oven, usually about 10 minutes for those seeds to start, and they're pretty good. And then the pumpkin is actually going to stay in for about an hour, is usually what it takes for it to get really soft. So after that 10-ish minutes or so, my seeds coming out, they're looking nice and crispy. I just reset my oven again to continue cooking the pumpkin. I usually turn it down then to like 350, and I continue cooking it for another 50 minutes or so is usually what the pumpkin needs. You're just looking to get it nice and soft. So a longer cook is better. A longer lower cook is better. And then these are my little seeds. I'm just kind of spreading them out. They look nice and crispy. You can see they've gotten a little bit of a golden brown tinge to them, so that's totally perfect. So I just try one to see what it tastes like to make sure it's crispy. And I'm like, yep, that's pretty good. So moving on, my pumpkin is cooked. And then I just let it sit to cool. So that's why I took it out with bare hands, because I let it sit for a while beforehand. And now that it's cooled down, I can easily pick it up, and I'm going to scoop out all of the pumpkin guts and literally just put it right into the food processor to make it so much easier to do. So the pumpkin cooked for roughly an hour total, and then I let it sit, just until, for a couple hours to cool down, that I could pull it out with my hands. Otherwise, it can be a little bit hot. You can take it out before that if you want to, but I like to be able to pick it up with my bare hands and just scrape it all out into my food processor and just pull it all in there. And if you have a really bigger pumpkin, you can't fit it all. You just kind of do a whole bunch, and you want to kind of aim for roughly 3 cups worth, but I just kind of do the whole thing because it fits anyways. And then I still add in the same amount of other ingredients, which I'll show you guys as we're going through this. So I just get all of my pumpkin goodies in there. It doesn't matter if you have like the stringier stuff or if there's the odd seed. It's not the end of the world, because the food processor is going to chop that all up really, really good and make it nice and smooth. And I've got some of my other ingredients already there to go in. So I'm just scraping all of that out, and you're just trying to be careful not to get the skin. That's a little bit tougher. Sometimes it can have a little bit of a burn on it, and you just don't include that part. But otherwise, everything else is going into the food puree. You can see I've got a couple dogs right there with me. Lona is on the left. She's watching to see if anything's going to drop and be tasty. And then Bella's having a little nap on my right. We have our little corgis. Corgis are like potato chips. You can't have just one. Oh, and there's one of my little kiddos busted in with her comb. So once I get all of that going in, it's time to add the spices and the salt. So I do 1 teaspoon of everything. It's and everything that you need to put in it is 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of ginger, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. That's me checking my recipe just to be sure of what it is that I'm doing. But it's 1 teaspoon salt, 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1 teaspoon ginger, 1 teaspoon of cardamom, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. So everything you want to put in there, and 1 teaspoon of ground cloves. So it's salt, cinnamon, ginger, ground cloves, cardamom. Those are all the things. I just do 1 teaspoon of everything. If there's something that you don't like the taste of, you can do a little bit less. Sometimes cloves I find a little bit strong, so I'll aim more for half. And cardamom I find is really nice and has like a sweetness to it, so I'll sometimes add a little bit more of that, aim for more like 1.5. But you can adjust things however you want to adjust them. So that's me adding all of my different spices in. After you get all of your spices in, then it's time to add the honey. So instead of using sugar, I use raw honey to sweeten this. Honey is actually going to boost a lot of your health factors. So this is raw honey, and it's actually our neighbor who has all of these bees, which means that it's local honey. And so that this honey is actually going to contain a lot of the local antibiotics and things that are in it that help us. Not necessarily antibiotics, but it can have some antifungals, different properties in it that give you immune boosting systems and really helps your body. And the other thing to know about sugar is that sugar feeds cancer and also feeds a lot of other really harmful diseases and things in our cells that we don't really want it to do. So the more we can get away from refined sugar, the better, and replace that with raw local honey, you're actually going to have local health benefits and not have all of the other harmful stuff in it. So that's me juggling some dinner at the same time going on over there. So next up is our eggs. So we're doing 4 eggs are being added to this mixture. So we're adding all of that in, and then we're going to mix that all up. So this mixture is pretty simple. You're basically looking for those 3 cups of pumpkin. So if you wanted to not use a real pumpkin, you could actually use a can of pumpkin puree. Then you've got all of those spices that we put in, and we've got this 4 eggs that we're doing. And then the only other thing to add in is 1 can of evaporated milk. And the eggs are good to be a little bit beaten first. So I just give those a little bit of a stir up, and then I'm going to add it into the pureer as well. So it's good to have all of those things all in. And just to make life simple, I literally just dump everything in together. This is me getting the can of evaporated milk that I'm going to pour in. Evaporated milk instead of using just like normal milk. And that's my family all hanging around. You can see all sorts of stuff going on. Just making this pumpkin pie is super delicious. Everybody's hoping that they'll be around and it'll be ready for them. And then we just turn on that puree to get that going. So it just blends everything all up perfect. You just end up with the one dish mainly to clean. So it's so easy. Literally just toss everything in there. And that's me tossing the can in the recycling right away. So doing a little bit of tidy up all along the way. So that's doing a nice puree, and then it's going to just get dumped into my pies evenly. So to do the pie base, this is super, super easy. This is the best way to make a pie base. You do 1 teaspoon of salt, 3/4 a cup of oil. I use the avocado oil as my favorite one to use. And then I do 2 cups of flour. So you just toss those in. I use like a regular all-purpose flour. And you can do a little more, a little less. I did 2. And then you're going to do a splash of milk. Literally just grab your milk and just aim for a little splash, something like that. If it's not enough, you can always add more. You're going to use your fork to kind of stir it all up and start to mix in all the little pieces. And then what you're looking for is a consistency that's kind of clumpy, like will stick together, but not super wet and sticky that it comes onto your hand in these massive clumps. So I kind of stirred around a little bit with a fork first, and then I switch over to my hand. You can see the other pie tray is over there as well. And I just kind of mix it around, and so it kind of all sticks together. You can see it all kind of sticks together, and I just kind of push it around and make a flat little base. I don't care too much to pull it up into the sides. I'm like, whatever, I'll just put it all on the base. Makes it work really well, and I do that for both of the little pans. These ones I find are kind of shallow, so it works really well. And if you don't want to have the base, you can just not have a base and do the pumpkin pie all on its own with nothing. We definitely do that sometimes with our leftovers. So I just pour the pumpkin puree on top, put it in the oven at 400 degrees for 10 minutes, and then down to 350 for another 40 minutes, and it comes out looking like this. And it's super delicious, super nutritious, full of a lot of health benefits. So I hope you guys enjoy that and give it a try because it is so good. Let me know.